So with nonmetals is one of those things that we kind of know. We just experience gases all the time. We breathe them in and things. But nonmetals are actually quite a broad category because we can see them, we can actually find nonmetals as solids, liquids, or gases. So we can actually find nonmetal substances as solids. And one example of that is in this picture here. So on the very right hand side, you can see that very dark crystal shape is actually iodine, and iodine is a nonmetal. You can see that some nonmetals actually can exist in solid form, and so that makes it a little bit more difficult to describe fully what a nonmetal is. But what we'll find is, in general, nonmetals have the following properties. Typically, nonmetals kind of share these properties. Not all of them will, but most of them do. So nonmetals have a variable state and form. So nonmetals in general can be gases, solids, or liquids. Doesn't matter. For example, oxygen is a gas at room temperature and pressure. Bromine is a liquid, and sulfur can be a solid. So we can see all these different chemicals can be different phases and states as well. Now often they're not lustrous, so I don't see a shiny piece of oxygen all the time, nor have I ever seen a shiny piece of sulfur. They're usually crystal, or they can't be polished to very shiny look. Now this is probably the key one. They're really poor conductors of heat and electricity, with the exception of carbon in the form of graphite. Okay, so the graphite in your pencil, that's probably the only exception of this rule. It happens to be a non-metal, but it also conducts electricity really well. So it's just an exception. But in general, you'll find that these non-metals are poor conductors of heat and electricity. So for instance, lightning, it's several thousand, or actually several million volts between the cloud and the earth. And the current is very big, but it takes that several million. But in order to get a similar current metal, you would need a much smaller voltage. And the reason is because the resistance of the air is so big, because it conducts electricity so poorly. Now in terms of the heat, with heat, what we find is that if you put a very small layer of gas in between two pieces of glass, so if this is glass here, and this is glass here, oops, that doesn't look right. And then you seal this section and put, say, air here. That makes the glass really good at stopping heat from escaping or getting in. And we call that double glazing. So in Australia, this isn't popular because it's hot here and it's slightly more expensive than a regular window. But in countries like Canada, where it's very cold, triple glazing, so having another piece of glass here with more air in between, is the standard. So it's it makes the window much better at letting heat stay in a building. And so that shows you that air conducts heat very badly because the heat can't get out of this room into the outside world. Okay. Now, another property is that they're not malleable or ductile, and they're often brittle. A gas cannot be malleable. It's sort of infinitely malleable, but it won't keep its shape. So that's why we don't call them malleable or ductile. If we do find them in solid form, often we'll find nonmetals to be brittle. So if you hit it with a hammer, it'll shatter. Whereas if I hit a piece of steel with a hammer, it's either going to just bounce off harmlessly or it's going to bend the metal a little bit. So they're not malleable at all. And because of the gas, liquid, or solid phase problem, they can have lots of different types of melting points. So which of the following groups contains only non-metal elements? So we're looking for only non-metals. So the fastest way to do this would be look for the ones that have metals. Okay. So this one has palladium, and if you've watched the Iron Man movies, the little arc reactor in his chest uses palladium, and we know that's a metal, so A is definitely not one. Here we have iodine, nitrogen, and helium, and carbon. Now all of those are non-metals, but we'll have a look and see if we can find any other ones. No, sorry, selenium, yeah, which is a semi-metal, so we can't use this one. Also, here we have silver, Ag. And silver is obviously a metal, so that can't be that one. So it's probably B. It has iodine, which is a non-metal, nitrogen, which is a non-metal, helium, we know when we breathe it in, it's a non-metal, and carbon, as we mentioned, is a non-metal as well. So you're given a sample of the element iodine in a crystal form. Which of the following characteristics would it not have? Okay, so which one don't we see if we have solid iodine? Now firstly we need to know what iodine is, and iodine is a non-metal. So instantly we can see that C, it won't have good electrical conductivity, because we know non-metals don't have good electrical conductivity. There you have it.